G'day folks and welcome back. This is Vintage Bolton. Boy, am I excited today to bring you this turntable restoration. It's not often I get excited by turntables these days. And at first glance you may be forgiven for thinking, well, what's so special about this turntable? It looks like your run-of-the-mill 70s turntable from Kenwood or Pioneer or JVC, gunmetal, top plate, brush fascia, and a veneered plinth. And you get a bit closer and you start to think, this isn't your run-of-the-mill turntable. This might be a bit of a clue here. But let me pop off the Platter for the first time and show you why this is a truly special turntable that doesn't get mentioned a lot in the annals of turntable history. First time trying to take this Platter off. It's definitely on there. On there pretty good. As is often the case, it needs a little bit of persuasion. Ta-da! No, ladies and gentlemen, this is not a Thorens 124, but it is a belt and idler hybrid turntable. The motor turns the pulley, which turns the idler wheel, which turns the Platter. Look at that thing. Now, as I usually do, I was trolling through eBay, and sometimes I like to set the filter to parts not working when I'm feeling adventurous, and then from price low to high, and see what other junk I can buy, much to my wife's dismay. If I hadn't have seen this turntable before, I would not know what I was looking at, I don't think. Just so happens that about 2 years ago, I was in the local pawn shop here in Adelaide, South Australia, and they had one for sale. But it was for $500 dues. Tested it, it was running at only 30 RPMs, and I thought to myself, that is far too rich for a unique turntable that's not running properly already. Why? Well, if you're working on something like a Thorens or a Garage, any of the popular turntables, there are many spare parts around, and people still make brand new spare parts for them. But something like this, there's no guarantee what I'll be walking into. And when I unpacked this, the 33 was engaged. And I have no idea how long that was engaged for. So I was a bit worried that I'd have a flat spot on the idler. Luckily not. It was engaged in play over here. So, I mean, that's just probably to lower the tone arm. But I took the chance on it because I managed to snag it for only $138.50. And as you can see, first of all, it was incorrectly titled. It's not a KD-1033, it's a KP-5021. And for that price, I figured the juice was worth the squeeze. As they say, you've got to risk it to get the biscuit. It's dusty, it's beat up. The hinges are cracked. It's not a train wreck. There's some veneer missing down here, but it sure as hell makes for an amazing candidate. Should get me out of trouble for now. Let's flick it on. It's on. Aha. Right. Thank you, Robert. Cool. Apart from being a smidgen fast, it's certainly not the flat 30 that I got from the other one. Anyway, I think it's high time I stop talking and start restoring. I think the plan of attack is obviously service bearings and motors. Try and look for a new belt. We're going to have a look at the manual, see which cartridge was meant to come with it, whether there's a replacement for that, because that could be cool. I don't think I'm going to re-veneer the plinth. I think I'm going to do my best to glue down a few of these loose parts, find a little bit of replacement here, and afterwards I'll share you the results and my thoughts. Done. Now for a PSA. Please, please, for the love of all things vinyl, if you have one of these turntables or any turntable that's been sitting around for a while, please service it before using it. Either service it yourself or take it to someone to service, because as you saw in those bearings, the main bearing and the pulley bearing, those thrust pads had turned to goo and the spindles were touching the bare metal caps, possibly causing irreversible damage to the bearings, or more damage than you'd like to deal with. I replaced those with Delrin. As you saw, I cut my own Delrin thrust pads. I'm not quite sure what Kenwood were thinking, and I measured those old thrust pads as best I could from the crumbling bits. But I definitely had to make a few different sizes, too thick, and I couldn't screw the bearing caps back on the bottom. So it leads me to believe that perhaps those thrust pads that Ken would use were of a softer plastic, and I can't be sure whether they had their own sort of conical divots in it that those bearings rested in. I'm sure you'll agree with me, it certainly looks a hell of a lot better than it did, and I'm really happy with how the plinth came out. I was able to use some filler and some wood stain to bring it all back together. For the meantime, I've decided not to put the dust cover hinges back on until I fix those cracks. And well, obviously as I was servicing it, I came across a lot more information about this turntable. It looks to be that it was originally meant for the Japanese domestic market only. Then obviously it did get exported to a couple of countries, and maybe the KP 5021 was that international version. There's one in Japan called the PU 400, which is virtually identical with the same tone arm, and then they did a version without the tone arm, which is pretty cool. And that tone arm is in fact a Gelco SA100, which is pretty cool. This is a very good arm. It's a very good arm. Yeah, a little more complicated than it needs to be, I think. I've never been a huge fan of this lateral balance. You're meant to, before you do the tracking force and the anti-skate, lift the turntable up and adjust that until it doesn't move. This cancels the force going that way, that cancels the force going that way. This is a medium compliance tone arm. And I ran into a bit of bad luck with that cartridge. I thought it had the original cartridge on it, which had a fairly affordable stylus. And then I realized that it was in fact someone had already replaced it. And it was in fact a JVC 4MD 20X, which was sort of like a quadraphonic cartridge. There was a Shibata replacement, but that was worth twice as much as what I paid for the turntable, so definitely wasn't going to get that. There's a lot to unpack here, so bear with me. So it's according to the Kenwood flyer, it needs something that tracks at 2 grams exactly. And well, I didn't really have anything that tracked at 2 grams in my collection. I popped on the Shaw V3 and V4, and they, it'll work. It sounds fine, it's something like 1.8 grams. It will track just fine, but first time I bought a new cartridge in donkey's years. I bought the AT VM95E, which tracks at 2 grams. Recommended to be exactly 2 grams. And as soon as I put that on, this isn't even run in properly yet. I've barely been playing it. Probably 6 records, but it sounds amazing already. It's perfectly suited to this arm. So for, $70 Australian, that was a bargain. All right. Apart from the thrust pads in these 2 bearings, the other problem I had was the speed. Kenwood says that this is in fact a hysteresis synchronous motor, 4-pole motor. Hysteresis motors run incredibly smooth and silent. They're better than your regular AC motor. They lock onto that speed using the grid's frequency, so they're not affected by those fluctuations. Funnily enough, I've seen that exact same motor before in another obscure Japanese turntable. Whether they copied the Thorens design or not, it's pretty blatantly copied from the Thorens 124. The thing that lets this down is, and I don't know why you would go to all that effort, I guess it's cost cutting and whatnot, but there's no pitch control, nothing like an eddy brake to control that speed. By the time I'd finished servicing it and dicking around and fine tuning it, a belt that came with it was, pretty done for. It was too slack, wasn't even staying on properly. By the time I finished servicing everything, it was running faster. Jumped up to 33.6, 7, sometimes 8, and I was like, damn, all that work and such a brilliant turntable would just be such a shame not to get it at 33.3, 33 and a third. This is the only sort of official belt I could find online. This is from West Coast Belts in the US. And it certainly looks to be the part, but it's super thick and tight. And that, of course, just, the thicker belt made it run faster. And it really did seem to be pulling the motor, putting too much tension on it. And it would just jump up to over 34 RPMs. This is the Thorens 124 belt, and it's the Thacker belt. And that at least got it close enough to 33.6, 33.7. But I wasn't happy. Luckily, you've actually got a lot of leeway with the 2 pulleys and the idler wheel and the platter, the rim of the platter. If this were just a regular belt turntable, you couldn't just shave down the pulley. That would make it go faster. I know some people have wrapped things around their pulleys before to get it to the correct speed, but it sounds like, dog crap. But yes, if you shave that down on this one, it will run faster. But if you shave down these steps here on this pulley, it will slow down, which is exactly what I did. Because the idler wheel, this one's for 50 hertz. It's got the 50 hertz switch there, and the 60 hertz switch. These 2 bottom steps are for 50 hertz, and these 2 top steps are for 60 hertz. So that's pretty cool. That's what Kenwood had in mind to send it. I don't think they quite understood how it was going to run in 220 volt countries, 240 volt countries. Because that original belt, I don't even know if that one is correct or not. I don't know if someone, you know, but it's possible that that belt was just for 60 hertz countries, you know, in Japan. So I stuck this spindle in the drill and just shaved away those 2 steps with sandpaper, which is what I would do anyway, just to remove that crud, as you saw when I was servicing it. But I took it a step further. I wrapped up the spindle in paper and tape so it wouldn't get damaged, put it in the drill. A lathe would be better. If you've got a lathe and you're skilled with that, that would be better. But I did it bit by bit and I was finally able to get it to 33 1/3. And I was so happy. Anyone who's got this and has written about it online has actually said the same thing, that they find that it runs a smidgen fast. Yes, you can shave that down, those steps. And even if you were to go, you know, too far, I guess theoretically then you could shave down your pulley. Look, it's not perfect. That's not the perfect way to do it, but at least I know that I can use this turntable with the Thorens 124 belt forever, and Thacker belts are awesome. The only thing that would make this turntable perfect would be some pitch control, an eddy brake, but like the Garage or the Thorens, but I get it, that would introduce. I certainly seem to have a habit of adopting these obscure idler wheel turntables that have been beat to death. So I hope you found this video useful, and please, if you have any questions about this turntable at all, or suggestions, or your own experiences, comment below. Bye for now.